side of the ocean. I'm like, no, you can't. You can't see it at all. And I was describing the ocean, and they were just blown away by this. And I was really, really proud of myself, because I don't know a lot about anything. So I'm like, telling somebody about the ocean, you feel like Einstein. And they're like, wow, well, what else have you got? You know, what other kind of information you have? I'm like, okay, you know. And it was one of these days where you could like see the moon. It was such a clear day. And I was like, well, you know, in America, we put a man on the moon. And I'll never forget this. These kids, they were like, they're kind of looking up at the moon, and they're like, you put a man on the moon? And I'm like, yeah, isn't that amazing? And they're like, you put a man on the moon? And I started looking up, I'm like, dude, you put a man on the moon? And I'm like, how would we do that? How would we ever have him up there? And I checked with my volunteer friend, I'm like, yeah, we got a man on the moon. He's like, yeah, put a man on the moon. Yeah, put a man on the moon. And they had been discussing in the meanwhile, they're like, we were talking, you know, they called me Conor, brother, we were talking, and we don't think you put a man on the moon. I'm like, yes, we did put a man on the moon. And they're like, don't argue with the orphan. And we kind of got this little tiff. But I was realizing that this was the world that they lived in. And once you start to live in this world, you start to realize how crazy some of the outside of this world was. Anyway, I was putting them to bed for that first night. And it was, by the way, the reason why these kids are, you see they're doing, I forgot this until somebody pointed it out to me. And I will recognize some of these kids. But, by the way, if you did, Anna Howe, this is from the book, Anna Howe, if you didn't pick that one up. Anyway, so all these kids are kind of like flexing, and they're all flexing because, you know, these are tiny kids, and I had told them that I was like this legendarily strong man in my country, because they were so small, I could pick up like 4 of them. They're like, wow, you must be the strongest man in America. And I'm like, I happen to be the strongest man. And so hopefully none of them don't, you know, hopefully none of them visit America. But anyway, it was at night, and you know, and we had just sort of like, you know, we finished our, this was actually breakfast, but we ate the same thing for breakfast and dinner, dal bhat with, you know, the rice and the lentils. And they were asking me, you know, because I had just eaten the dal bhat, they were like, oh, did you enjoy it? And I was like, yes, it was lovely, and it wasn't my favorite. But I was putting them to bed, and they kept asking me questions. And they're going to bed, and they were like, oh, you know, I can you imagine? I'm like, just go to bed. They're like, well, wait, Conor brother, what's your favorite food? And I was like, I don't know. Go to bed. And I just kind of turn off the light, and I hear them whispering inside. And they were like, oh, I'll bet it's goat. And so I turned back on the light. I'm like, well, it's not goat. You know, it's not goat. It's probably like hamburgers or something. And they're like, oh, hamburgers, yeah. That sounds amazing. What's a hamburger? And I was like, you know, hamburgers, you know, like you know, beef. And they're like, yeah, that sounds incredible. What is that? And I was like, you know, beef, like cow. Now, I didn't know anything about the Hindu culture. And I didn't totally understand that, you know, of course, that this is their deity. I mean, this is the god for them. And so their jaws are all dropping to the floor, and I'm realizing this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, just go to sleep. So I kind of quickly turn off the lights, and I was realizing in that moment, you guys mind if it's off? Can you still see me? You're fine. So I was realizing in that moment that I was going to have to sort of like really improve my understanding of this culture. So at least I wasn't, you know, telling them that, you know, right before they went to bed that I'm, you know, murdering their god. And because this is the thing, in a place like Nepal, if you haven't gone yet, India is the same way. Cows just wander the streets, they wander in front of, the cow here was wandering in front of the goal, so they just kind of sat down. Like, well, does it count if it's the cow? Anyway, there's all kinds of logistics around cows. But it was so often we read things in the paper, and or something I do, or I did, and I still do, and think, oh my gosh, that's so horrible, look what's going on in South Sudan, oh my gosh, look what's going on in Egypt, look what's going on in Africa. And we just think, gosh, I hope somebody's doing something about that. But this was my moment where I thought, this is the thing I'm going to do something about, you know? And to be totally honest, this wasn't my kind of, you know, oh, here's the S on my chest. It was more, nobody else knows about these kids. And I was the one that went up to these kids and I said, listen, don't worry, because I'm leaving, but don't worry. Don't worry, because somebody's going to come, somebody's going to pick you up, and your life is going to be better. You're going to be fine. They'll be here in a few days. Everything's finally going to be okay. And they were so happy. And it took months building their trust. Months.